Shalom everyone, I'm Dr. Rabbi-Cohen Shalomim haLahawi. I wanted to talk briefly about the concept in Judaism, Mizrahi Judaism, finishing the line, finishing the race. A lot of people don't really understand what it means to get honor and get the blessings of the Most High Yahweh, according to principle and according to how He has designed it. See, in this age and time, a lot of people, including religious people, have been poisoned by liberalism, liberal democracy, which is a culture, ideology that is rooted in anarchy, in the belief that humans don't live by principles, don't live by laws, don't live by morals. And especially when it comes to the divine Torah, the law of Yahweh Elah, they are far removed from that, and they seek to poison children starting as early as pre-K with this anti-law, anarchic, do as we see right in our own eyes mentality. And so a lot of people go through life and they may seem to be winning. Some people get married, and especially this is in relationship to covenant relationships and marriages between men and women. They go through and they get married, they get in a relationship, and they do what the Torah says. They know each other. In Hebrew, yada, to know, is actually tied to sexual union. And they go and lie down with each other without understanding the principles of the Most High Yahweh. And then suddenly down the road, the relationship incinerates and breaks up. And after the relationship has failed, a lot of people want to say, well, I was faithful during the entire relationship. And I want to issue a challenge. I want you to think about what the concept of faithful actually means in the eyes of the Creator as it relates to finishing the line. It says in Habakkuk, the prophet, the just shall live by his faithfulness. What does that mean? Faithfulness means that you don't just have a ideological mentality of belief, but you're actually walking and you're actually engaging in an act that shows and manifests the concept of faithfulness based off of the principles that you have instilled into your life. And so when it comes to relationships, the Eternal Creator expects that when a man and a woman, or man and women, as really if it's polygamy, to remain committed until quote unquote death do them part. And so according to the Creator, in order to be considered faithful, always in the present tense, because faithful in the past tense does not exist. You can't be faithful and you can't get credit for being faithful in the past. You could only get credit for what you're doing now. And the Eternal Creator considers completing the line, or finishing the race, or completing your mission in life, especially as it relates to relationship, is when you or your partner departs from this world. If you are not able to get into a relationship where it leads to death do you part, then you can't claim to be faithful. You can't claim and expect to get credit from the Creator in the area of faithfulness when it's past tense. Because a lot of you all get married, and all of us are guilty at some point, even I'm guilty and everything. And a lot of us, all of us, get married, and it's according to how we see right in our own eyes. It's not according to the laws of the Creator. And some of us know better, like myself. And I've learned the hard way, even being a Rabbi-Cohen from the past, of what happens when you do things as you see right in your own eyes. But we get into these relationships as we see right in our own eyes, and the Eternal Creator is not included in that covenant. and we make this covenant for ourselves. And then when it breaks, like I said, when it ends or it corrupts and destructs, we want to say, I was faithful. No. You don't get credit for that no more than when the prophet Ezekiel speaks of when the righteous lives his life in righteousness and then strays away and commits sin and then dies in that sin. He's no longer remembered for the righteousness that he has engaged in. He's remembered for the sin that he committed in the present tense. Just like if you were in the reverse, when a person commits sin and live a destructive life and then become righteous, they're no longer remembered for the corruption and the sinful way that they conducted themselves. They're then remembered for their righteousness, which is in the present tense. And so it's the same thing with faithfulness. You're only remembered for the last act that you engaged in. And so if your last act is divorce or breaking up or corrupting a relationship, then that's what you're going to be remembered for. Because the Eternal Creator is not going to give you credit for being faithful in the past. He's going to give you credit for being faithful in the present. And of course, the Eternal Creator never intended for human beings to get divorced. Let's get that straight. Divorce is allowed, and especially when it comes to adultery and when it comes to idolatry and those things there. The Eternal Creator does not hold that against you if your spouse commits adultery and destroys the relationship. However, just as the Torah says, the Torah makes plain and clear, if you actually end up having sexual relations outside of marriage with the woman, you are to actually marry her, and you're not supposed to be able to divorce her all the days of your life. Now, if the Torah says that, and you have engaged and you've laid down with the woman, especially if she's a maiden, a young girl who's a virgin, and you humble this woman and you don't take her in as your woman in a covenant relationship for the rest of your life, you're committing sin. You're violating the Torah. And this is the problem with why the curses of Dabarim, which is known as Deuteronomy 28, is plaguing so many people's lives. It's because a lot of you all open the door to attacks by the enemy, probably since you were in middle school, high school, especially for women after you turn 12, and for men, boys after you turn 13. You're responsible. Once you start to be able to once you're able to reproduce, multiply, and increase biologically, you're responsible for upholding the laws of the Creator. And so a lot of you have invoked the curses of Deuteronomy 28 because you got into a race, and of course you took a few laps, 5 laps a year for each lap, and you were in the lead. You were doing everything right. You consider yourself a great husband. You consider yourself a great wife, a great woman to your man and everything. But all of a sudden, when you get to the finish line, you stumble and you fall. And a lot of people don't even make it to the finish line. You get in 20, 30 years and everything, and unfortunately a lot of people here, you barely can make it a year. But you're leading, and then all of a sudden you trip over and you fall down during the race and you don't get back up. That's when the relationship destroys itself. You don't get credit for how many laps you were the fastest in a race. You only get credit for whether you completed or not. Even if you don't come in first place, you still get credit for whether you completed the race or not. You don't get credit for anything if you don't complete the race. A person who falls down and don't get back up is exactly what they should be called, a loser. And we have too many loser mentalities with relationships. We have too many loser mentalities with child rearing, because a lot of people break up right in the middle of child rearing when you have children, and then you rob the child of being able to have of their inherent right of being raised by their 2 biological parents. The Eternal Creator is not going to give you credit, and he's not going to bless you, and he's not going to walk with you when you don't follow his law and you do as you see right in your own eyes. Just like a lot of you all have gotten married according to how you saw right in your own eyes, and the eternal creator wasn't included, or you laid down and got into a relationship sexually and the eternal creator was not included in the equation, you all are breaking up the exact same way you got into these relationships, as you see right in your own eyes, and then you expect the eternal creator to go and find somebody else for you and give you something better. Well, I can tell you right now, especially if you especially are responsible for destroying a relationship, whether you've committed adultery, whether you did not live up to who you're supposed to be as a man, whether you failed to be a helpmeet, if you are the one that's primarily at fault for breaking up a relationship, the eternal creator is never going to give you somebody better than the person you had, especially if that person is a righteous person of Allah and follows the Torah. You're not going to get better than that. If you do get anything, it's going to be something you're going to have to settle for and be content with, but you're never going to get number one, the best quality man. The eternal creator doesn't offer, he doesn't reward sin. And you can listen to liberalism all you want and everything. The bottom line is, you're going to be held accountable for your actions. You're going to be held accountable for the things that you do. You're going to be held accountable for the things you don't do. You're going to be held accountable for being responsible, and you're going to be held accountable for being irresponsible. And you know, a lot of people don't realize that the concept of love in Judaism, it's actually a verb. It's an action. Love is not an emotion. Love is not a feeling whatsoever. What many people confuse with love, that inner feeling you have and everything, that is actually equivalent to what we call passion and everything. And of course, passion, because it's feelings, it can come and go day in and day out. And so a lot of people base their relationship based off of feelings and passion, and they end their relationships based off of feeling and passion. Principle is never a part of the equation. Love is rooted in responsibility, because the truth is, when you think about the feeling or the passion and everything, you can't create a responsible relationship based off of passion. Passion is secondary. That concept of love that people think of American, that is actually secondary importance in the eyes of Yahweh. Yahweh considered being responsible and uniting with a man and a woman uniting based off of purpose, calling, and principles rooted in the Torah. That comes first. You build relations, you find out, attraction, you get to know each other, you communicate, then you start to build a relationship in a responsible manner according to the Torah. And you start to grow, and you start to get evolved, and you start to bond with each other and everything. And out of that growing and out of that relationship building is when love becomes manifest. Love never becomes manifest before a relationship. You can't say you love somebody at first sight. There's no such thing. Love is born out of responsibility. Passion is born out of that relationship. And so if you're not building and starting a relationship based off of set principles, which means that if you're a person of the Torah, you're expected to uphold the Torah when you're actually going out and seeking another woman or seeking a spouse or a husband, to make a covenant relationship with. And so if you're really true to the Torah and you really have standards and you really have principles that you uphold, then you're not going to let those principles and standards be compromised. You're not going to lower those standards to get into a relationship with someone who does not share the same cultural, the same spiritual, the same have compatible callings and purpose and everything. You're not going to, you're not going to compromise that. You're going to keep those standards high, so that the only thing you attract is another person who's of high quality. When you lower standards and you don't live according to the principle of Yahweh, and you start doing things as you see right in your own eyes, you're pretty much gambling and playing Russian roulette with your life. And that's why I'm looking at a lot of brothers and sisters and everything, whether Jewish and Gentile alike, and I'm looking at the type of women that they engage themselves into and lay down with and everything. And I even look back at the type of women I've laid down with and everything in sincerity, with the intent of building a family. But they're laying down trying to turn hoes into housewives. And if you understand that concept, then you know what I'm talking about. Trying to turn somebody who's not according to the Torah into somebody who's going to follow the Torah. No, why not find Why not find somebody who's already living in righteousness? Somebody you don't have to tell to read the Torah. Somebody you don't have to tell, have to keep instructing to follow the covenant and everything, and maintaining the integrity of the household. No, you need to find somebody who's already in the Torah. You need to find somebody who's already righteous, a woman who's fulfilling the helpmeet and prepared herself to be a helpmeet, and who is capable of, once she gets into a relationship, of activating herself as the Proverbs 31 woman. You want her already walking in that. You don't want a woman who is not walking in that, because if she's not walking in it, then she's actually walking according to the domain of Satan. So why would we as men continuously go out of our covenant and out of our domain that protects our lives, that preserves us, and that keeps us empowered and keeps us strong, where we can be fruitful, multiply, and increase, and have dominion according to the law and the commands of Yahweh? Why would we step out of that domain and go into another domain that's ruled by Satan, where women are corrupt and where people have made a covenant with death? Why would we go out there and try to seek a woman and think we're going to bring her back into the covenant and then expect the covenant to work? And see, that's where a lot of us are simply failing. We're going and we're intermixing, and we're becoming what they call unequally yoked. And when you become unequally yoked, that means when the race starts and everything, and it's time to pass the baton on back and forth to each other, you all are not on the same page. You're not all, your minds are not really in the same race. And so when it's time to pass the baton back to each other and finish the race and everything, you're passing on the value system, communication, relationship, and everything back and forth, and it's dropping. And before you know it, you look, either one or both of you all have fallen, and you don't get back up. That's not faithfulness. Even if you're able to stay in the lead in 5, 6, 10, 15 laps, if you don't make it to death do us part, you failed in faithfulness. You did not complete your purpose and calling as it relates to marriage. And as such, you're invoking the Devarim 28 curses. And this is why we see Satan having free reign in the destruction of certain families, certain ethnic group families and everything. You look at the black community, less than 5% of people actually get married. That's culture and family genocide. That's a recipe for never progressing, never having empowerment, and you'll never experience any concept of what they call black power. You never reach that level and everything, because if family is not the center of all your living, then you're living wrong. You're living without a foundation. You're living outside the blueprint that the Eternal Creator has created for the optimal growth, development, and prosperity of human beings. And so you can't live up to the law of the Creator and having a marriage and having a covenant relationship where death do you part is the line that you need to cross to finish the race. And with all of these voices and all of this liberal poison and ideologies that have plagued certain ethnic groups and everything, they can't hear this message. They can't hear these kind of concepts and everything. It's far removed from them. But when you look at the Jewish people and even the Muslim people and everything who live by the Quran, who live by the Torah, we have our families intact. We prosper. We're always above. The curses of the Torah does not come upon us. We're not victimized by those things. We're actually prospering, and we're actually living up to the promises that Yahweh gave to the seed of Abraham. While other nations and other ethnic groups, they're still struggling. They're still living in a reality that is not rooted in producing life, is not rooted in anything related to the Creator. And they're doing what they see right in their own eyes. And guess what? They're doing everything in life wrong. And they can't finish the race. And so, it has to be a time where you got to say enough is enough. And you got to stop listening to these rogue religions that have come around in the past 2,000 years. You have to go back to the ancient path, the old way. the original way and go back to the eternal covenant that Yahweh established and the blueprint that Yahweh has given humankind to live and follow and pattern themselves after, so you can be fruitful, multiply, increase, and have dominion. Having dominion denotes having power, being empowered. That's what he gave to man. And to women, he defines the empowered woman in Proverbs 31. And her correct characteristics and what she does and everything. And of course, when you look at the average woman in America that's poisoned by liberalism, all you got to do is measure her behavior, measure her speech, measure her life, measure the fruits that she's producing around her, measure everything about her by the Proverbs chapter 31 woman, and you'll find easily either a woman who is going to add unto your purpose and calling as a man, or who's going to take away from your purpose and calling as a man. You know, and you don't ever want to get a woman who you don't feel is going to carry your legacy should you pass away before her. You don't want a woman who's going to go back and wallow in the mud like pigs do. I mean, you can clean a pig all day long and wash the external aspect of a pig off, but inside a pig is always unclean, and pigs always go back and waddle in the mud. And so you got to know for sure whether the woman you're in a relationship or the women you're going to be in a relationship with, can they legitimately carry on your legacy? Can they legitimately help keep your purpose and calling and vision alive, whether you're there or not? And it doesn't have to be death. Even if you have to go on a long trip, do you trust your woman to live up and be genuine and live up and maintain the principles and the values that is established for your home and for the relationship? Or do you have a woman who is just there and she's doing everything because you're telling her to do it, and there's nothing genuine about her? And when you're not around, she's not upholding your image, and she's not walking in your likeness, and she's not being a helpmeet. Or if you passed away, she would just go and simply, you know, jump into another bed and corrupt. Because if you have a woman that can't carry on your legacy, and you don't trust her to carry on your legacy, well, why would you trust that woman to properly raise your children, your future children and everything? And we see how that's turning out with the epidemic of child support and children and children being split up in relationships, from relationships that have failed, have broken up and disintegrated because of the lack of faithfulness. We see how that has turned out, and it's been a catastrophe. Children's lives are being ruined and destroyed, and it's so epidemic and it's so out of control, and it's so many children that's damaged and everything, until now they think that they're normal because they see everybody else like themselves, and it's now become a normalized culture. And so destruction has become their way of life that they're used to. They've made a covenant with death, and they're comfortable with the covenant of death because that's all they know. You have to actually be proactive in protecting your future, protecting your legacy, protecting your purpose, protecting your children, your future seed, and protecting your ability to run the race to complete to death do us part. Because you can be held accountable for picking the wrong person and bringing that person into your life, and then that person corrupts and fails and destroys the relationship and the covenant relationship. You can be held accountable for that, because the Eternal Creator feels like you should have known better. You should have known that wasn't going to work before you even chose that person. That's why in the book of Malachi, and the whole issue about divorce and everything, it actually starts off with the fact that the Eternal Creator actually has a problem with Judah for taking the daughter of a foreign one, or a foreign mighty one, meaning a daughter from a pagan culture, a culture that does not uphold the Torah, and makes a covenant with her. And it specifically says the man that does that, let his tents be cut off. And of course, it talks about coming and weeping and crying before the altar about the woman you're dealing with in the spirit of treachery and everything. And the Eternal Creator says, why are you coming to me and everything when she's the wife of your covenant? He didn't say she was the wife of the covenant he made between you. He says she's the wife of and the woman of your youth, your covenant, which means you're responsible because you made that covenant with her as you saw right in your own eyes, and you did it in direct violation of the Torah. And so you can't come and cry to the Creator to fix something that he never put together in the first place. The only solution that he has for something that he didn't put together is for, he says, if you hate her, send her away. A lot of translations of the scriptures actually says, I hate divorce. Yes, Yahweh does hate divorce, but that is not what the scripture says. It says, if you hate her, send her away. But those are relationships that are not built according to the way of the Creator. But when you're dealing with the Torah, and you are trying to uphold the Torah, you're expected to get into covenant relationships that's going to last till death do us part, for better or for worse, through the good times and the bad times, till death do us part. The only way you can do that is if you don't have love, American love, the passion, dominating the responsible love, the verb, the principle, the value system. Because values is what guides us, values is what molds us, and values is what shape us and cause us to evolve and to pattern ourselves after the Creator. And so a lot of you all need to actually reevaluate your lives. And you need to listen to this, because this could be the root reason why you're having so many attacks, why you're failing in so many areas of your life, and why no matter how much you try, things seem to not be going well. You may have just opened up the enemy into your life because of a failed relationship or in past relationship that you did right according to your own eyes that end up failing, which then erases your credibility as being a person who's faithful. You know. Thank goodness we have Kenem and Hased, which is known as grace and mercy and Yahweh's loving kindness, for him to give us second chances and everything. So that's something to consider. If you're going to get into the race, and you're supposed to get into the race by the law of the Creator, being fruitful, multiplying, and increasing, and have dominion is a command to you. Have to get into the race, and you're expected to complete it. And that's the only way you can actually live and be a part of the concept of the just will live by his faithfulness. If you can't get into the race, number one, which means you can't get into a covenant relationship, you can't be activated into your purpose of calling anyways. Especially if you're, and the Torah Creator makes it plain and clear, over the age of 21 or over the age of 20. You know, all of our sages have written about this. You know, you have to get into the race and you have to complete it. And if you can't do that, then you can't make family the center of our living. And if you can't make family the center of our living, then you can't walk properly with Yahweh. You can't fulfill the Torah, and you can expect the blessings of Deuteronomy 28 to manifest in your life. It doesn't work like that. You have to get this liberal democracy out of your mind, out of your spirit, and out of your soul. And you got to return back to the Torah and allow principles and values and culture to mold and guide you and lead you. That's the only way you're going to ever prosper and start to win and be shielded from the attacks of the enemy that keeps sabotaging you. Every time you make 5 steps, you make it 3 steps back. The only way you can stop that is if you're in the Torah, because the Torah is the defense of the Torah doesn't restrict you, it protects you, and it gives you the necessary freedom to evolve and grow and become who Yahweh has purposed to call you to be. All of us have potential that needs to be released, that needs to be brought into the world. But a lot of our potential is being wasted because of the decisions we made, because we're doing things as we saw right in our own eyes, and we have to stop doing things as we see right in our own eyes. And so I just want to say, may Yahweh bless you, may Yahweh keep you, may Yahweh shine his face upon you and be gracious to you, and may Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom. Shalom alaikum. Alaikum shalom.